Well, good afternoon and welcome everyone to today's Australian Digital Inclusion Alliance meetup. Today's topic, strategy, leadership and innovation in digital inclusion. It's terrific to see such a great group of people joining us in the webinar today, and welcome also if you're watching this in catch-up mode on the ADIA YouTube channel. My name's Tim Marshall. I'm one of the co-conveners of the ADIA. I'll be your host today, and I'll try to do my best to keep things moving along smoothly. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands where we all meet today. For me, this is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And of course, given we're online today, we've got people joining us from right across the country, and we acknowledge and celebrate those traditional owners and lands as well. I pay my respects to elders past and present and emerging, and note that digital inclusion remains a crucial foundation to progress on outcome 17 of the Closing the Gap framework around access to information and services. And ADIA reaffirms our support for all the important work in that area. On that point, I commend to you our previous meetup covering priorities and progress for First Nations digital inclusion, which is available on our YouTube channel. Before we get underway, I'd just run through a few logistical points. First of all, noting that this session is being recorded and be posted online for future reference. Today we'll have three main presentations with brief Q&A sessions as they each conclude. I'll be facilitating those Q&A sessions, and the best way to get your questions in the mix will be to add them into the Zoom Q&A box that you should see in your options on your screen there. And if you're keen to make a general comment in the chat session, make sure you set it to panelists and attendees so everyone can see your message. As many of you are aware, the Australian Digital Inclusion Alliance is a shared initiative with over 500 business, government, academic and community organisations and individuals working together to accelerate action on digital inclusion. Our vision is to reduce the digital divide and enable greater social and economic participation for everyone in Australia. We do that by highlighting the national imperative for action and the value of key initiatives across the key pillars of affordability, access and ability. We're supported by Info Exchange, Telstra and Google, and we play a role to amplify and support the many great organisations working across this space, delivering initiatives, producing research to better inform programs in the future. We love your work and thank you. We also seek to elevate the importance of digital inclusion as a policy imperative, and I'll have a few things to note on that point as part of the discussion today. Slide, please, producer. Today, we're going to have three separate briefing updates, canvassing some important developments and updates around strategy, leadership and innovation in digital inclusion. In early May, we were delighted to take part and recognise the launch of the New South Wales Digital Inclusion Strategy. The launch was a very impressive event in Parramatta, and I imagine a number of those watching today were there and made contributions to shaping the strategy, as did ADIA. This strategy is a great example of government leadership so needed in digital inclusion, and it was terrific to see it represented by two New South Wales ministers, Minister for Customer Service and Digital Government, Jihad, and Minister for Disability Inclusion, Kate Washington, at the launch. One really positive thing about the New South Wales strategy is the acknowledgement that this is a shared endeavour and government needs to partner with the ecosystem to effect that change. Our first session today is presented by Nicole Rossini from the New South Wales Telco Authority, who has responsibility for strategy and implementation. It'll be great to hear how plans are going to bring that to life. Our second briefing today, though, is a good segue from that New South Wales strategy once we hear from Nicole. We're all obviously very aware of the recent federal election and historic return of the Albanese government. You'll also be conscious of the various narratives around productivity, underpinned by fairness, with a renewed focus on AI and national digital capability. The government clearly has a huge mandate for positive change, and I'll be giving a brief preview of how ADIA hopes to ensure that digital inclusion gains the focus it needs as a crucial enabler for so much the government would aim to achieve. That is from both an economic and equity perspective. And finally, I'm really looking forward to our third session today, where the team from SeedKit is keen to share progress of its latest research project funded by ADIA, the Australian Internet Domain Registrar. SeedKit's project is very relevant to this audience, working on innovations to track and enable digital inclusion initiatives for social enterprises. And I know the team is very keen to hear and get as many questions, as much feedback as possible from everyone online today. So first, today, the New South Wales Digital Inclusion Strategy. As I said, we're super enthusiastic about the potential for this strategy. It's an example for the important role of government in setting vision, creating action, and getting things done and measured. We're equally excited about the ways this strategy interfaces with the digital inclusion ecosystem and the opportunity to partner in its success. Nicole Rossini is Program Lead for Digital Inclusion Strategy at New South Wales Telco Authority, the state government agency responsible for this work. Thanks for joining us today, and Nicole, over to you.
Thanks, Tim. So hi, everyone. As Tim just said, I'm Nicole Rossini. I'm the Program Manager for the Digital Inclusion Strategy from the New South Wales Telco Authority. And I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about the Digital Inclusion Strategy that was launched by Minister Dib on the 1st of May. So the New South Wales Telco Authority had the privilege of leading the strategy because we are the connectivity leader for New South Wales Government. So this is the first of its kind in New South Wales. We've been working to keep emergency services safe and connected through the public safety network in some very extremely challenging circumstances, and we lead the state's telecommunication functional services area. However, connectivity alone is not enough to reap the benefits of a digital economy and society. New South Wales needed a digital inclusion strategy to make sure everyone can take part in the digital future. We identified that the digital divide is most likely to affect socio-economically disadvantaged communities, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, culturally and linguistically diverse communities, older people, regional, remote, rural people, communities, people with disability, LGBTQI plus community, and women. And I know you're all too aware that the digital inclusion is a complex and multifaceted issue and health disadvantages. So we can and we must do more as a government. So I'm extremely pleased that we're here today to talk about all the things that we are able to do. Next slide, please. The New South Wales Digital Inclusion Strategy is our whole of government plan to ensure everyone in New South Wales can participate in the digital world. Digital inclusion, as I said, is a complex and multifaceted issue. It's not just about having access to a device or the internet. It's about how the access or lack of affects different aspects of people's lives, from education to safety. It's about removing barriers, whether those are geographical, financial, or related to ability. To address this, we developed the strategy based on extensive consultations, including digitally excluded communities, public, government, to ensure that it really meets the community needs and delivers meaningful outcomes. The strategy focuses on 5 key pillars that form the foundation for digital inclusion: connectivity, affordability, digital ability, accessibility, and digital trust and safety. These are the foundational outcomes that make world-class government services available to all. We also know that we have to have a non-digital option for those who need those. So let's walk through each of these pillars. Next slide, please. So digital connectivity is the first pillar. This aims to ensure that everyone has access to the internet, particularly in current underserved areas. Improving digital connectivity offers a substantial economic and social benefit to the community by ensuring that they can participate in online education, access essential services, and stay connected with family and friends. 47% of people surveyed said they've experienced issues with their internet connection, like slow speeds and frequent dropouts. 1 in 4 survey respondents living in remote or regional New South Wales still do not have home internet access. So we're planning to partner with industry on innovative connectivity solutions, as well as introducing a temporary coverage policy to reach people in need in response to network failures. We're also looking at how to embed digital connectivity into all new infrastructure projects going forward. Next slide, please. Affordability is the next key barrier. The affordability pillar is about making devices and services more affordable, so cost doesn't stop people from getting online. 2 out of 3 people in social housing or remote areas told us that the increased cost of living is stopping them from getting online. We're looking at rolling out a device bank to collect, refurbish and distribute end-of-use New South Wales government laptops to those who are most in need, and exploring a government data donation model, allowing unused data to be shared with people who need it. We're also looking at support for safe digital access for people experiencing domestic and family violence. Next pillar, please. Next page. Digital ability. So this is the third pillar of the strategy. This involves making sure individuals have the skills they need to connect to the internet and the confidence to effectively use online resources to navigate the digital world. 22% of people said they don't have the skills to complete key online tasks such as finding a job, study, or access to online government services. Some key concerns included the constant need to upskill because of rapidly changing technology and needing help just with everyday tasks. We're building a digital mentorship network that involves connecting existing digital mentors in community centres, libraries, and other providers in partnership with community organisations and NGOs. Partnering with the tech industry and NGOs as well to expand access to training and digital literacy support. Next slide, please. So the fourth pillar is accessibility. The aim of this pillar is to remove barriers and ensure everyone can engage with and benefit from the digital experience. We want to make sure that government services are accessible for everyone, including people with disability. Half of people with disability in our survey said that they face challenges such as hard to use forms, complicated language, and missing accessibility features. We're embedding accessibility requirements across government from design to procurement. And to make this happen, one of our initiatives is a New South Wales Digital Inclusion Standard, which will guide how digital services are designed and delivered. Next slide, please. And our final pillar is digital trust and safety. This is about supporting people with the skills and tools to engage online in a safe and secure way. Digital trust and safety is critical as people need to feel safe and protected online to then be able to utilise those online resources. 83% of people said they've experienced scams, privacy breaches, or online harassment. And one of the key concerns that participants told us about was a lack of trust in government and the constant stream of new and more sophisticated scams. We're rolling out cybersecurity and privacy education at a community level, including launching a multilingual awareness campaign to help people protect themselves and their data. Next slide, please. This strategy sits at the heart of a fair and inclusive digital future, and it really sets a direction for the implementation and delivery of the strategy and the action plan that sits beneath this. These initiatives will improve digital access and participation, ensuring all people of New South Wales can engage with digital opportunities. As I just went through, this plan wasn't written in isolation. The actions in the digital inclusion strategy were developed through a deeply consultative, evidence-informed process grounded in real experiences and practical needs. The team listened to communities. People with lived experience of digital exclusion were at the centre of our consultations. It was through these consultations that we were told where the gaps were, whether it was access to devices, affordable internet, digital skills, or simply the confidence to get online safely. In addition, they looked at the data asking what's already working, what isn't, and what are other states and countries doing that we can learn from. Many of the actions were co-designed and some will be tested through pilots and partnerships. Currently, there are 33 actions that sit across the 5 pillars to be delivered over the next 4 years. On screen at the moment is a snapshot of the actions that sit under each of these pillars. I will also go into some more detail in the next couple of slides about some key initiatives that we think could align with the ADIA. Together, these initiatives aim to make digital government services accessible, safe, and inclusive for all. And importantly, we want to preserve non-digital options, as I said, to those who really need them. That is also a key focus. Next slide, please. So here's a snapshot of our priority initiatives for 2025. Alongside ongoing engagement that we're setting up at the moment, there's also the governance work. So firstly, we have the New South Wales Device Bank. It's currently in flight and it's progressing well. We're still in scope mode and research stage, but we're making some headway with this. Cybersecurity community training is in the early stages. Again, we're scoping and looking at a kickoff, and we'll move into delivery later in the year. We're setting up a government advisory group, starting with the stakeholder mapping and terms of reference are being drafted, as well as a digital inclusion non-government advisory group, beginning again with stakeholder identification and governance, which no doubt will have a lot of you here joining this group. Also, a connectivity literacy industry partnership is being scoped with a kickoff planned at the non-government group in Q3 and then moving into delivery. A multilingual cybersecurity awareness campaign will begin this year. We have also started scope with this. And we are refreshing the New South Wales connectivity strategy and roadmap. And lastly, the school student broadband initiative will commence at the end of the year. This is about us working with the Australian government to co-design the parameters of SSBI and include other cohorts beyond its current scope of families and carers with school-aged children. Next slide, please. So when we talk about this strategy and its actions, we're not just talking about a government document. We're talking about a shared vision built by and for the people of New South Wales, grounded in evidence and ready for real impact. We know that digital inclusion isn't something that government can solve alone. It really requires strong partnerships across sectors to drive meaningful change. As I mentioned, each of our partners have played a role in shaping the plan, and everyone brought something to the table, whether it was insights, infrastructure, innovation, or community reach. Our New South Wales government partners are foundational to this strategy, from local councils to other departments. Their reach into communities ensures that the plan is not only implemented from the top down, but it really grows from the ground up. They will help us identify underserved areas, such as cybersecurity community training, supporting digital literacy programs through libraries, and integrating digital skills into the public education and training system. Secondly, our non-government partners are our trusted connectors who help us understand the unique challenges faced by people with disability, older Australians, people in remote communities, refugees, and low-income households, ensuring what we deliver is not just accessible, but is also culturally safe, relevant, and empowering. And thirdly, our industry partners who bring innovation, scale, and sustainability. How can we partner with you on some of the projects that are in your pipeline already? Being able to collaborate will mean real outcomes. Next slide, please. So we recognise the ADIA's national leadership, and we look forward to exploring opportunities to collaborate and help advance our digital inclusion efforts. One initiative is for us to set up a non-government delivery partner group, and this group would bring expert advice and support to deliver this strategy. Also, the Device Bank, which I've spoken about a few times, we look to definitely work and partner with you on this. We're planning to connect people with digital mentors and work with NGOs and industry to improve online skills and digital literacy, as well as partnering with major tech companies and NGOs to existing digital skill resources. And finally, we want to work with broadband providers as well to promote affordable internet plans for communities that need it most. Next slide, please. There's a strong opportunity for collaboration between New South Wales Telco Authority and the ADIA. Once digital inclusion initiatives are developed, we hope to work with ADIA who can help promote them through their organisation. We're looking to raise awareness about digital literacy, broadband access and online safety. The government is also keen to understand the ADIA's plans in this space over the next 2 years. We want to explore how the ADIA's insight can guide more effective targeted delivery for the people of New South Wales. Digital inclusion is not just a goal, it's a shared responsibility. And through this action plan, it's up to all of us to work together to ensure that no one is left behind in this digital age. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, Nicole, for your presentation. It really is great to see the state taking a leadership position in this space. And thanks so much for the collaborative message about working together with ADIA and our community. When we think about the ADIA, yes, we are an organisation, but we are the sum of everyone involved here in the whole ecosystem. And we look forward to all of those discussions on how we can be effective together, including how we set and benchmark on the goals. So thanks so much. I now want to turn to the audience and see if we've got a couple of questions for you before we move on. So those in the audience, if you can identify the Q&A section in your options there on the Zoom, feel free to drop those in. We've got one question here from our colleague Heather Ray at Telstra, Nicole. Her question is around the goal around the digital inclusion standard in New South Wales. And I guess it goes to the inspiration you'll take to form that, and whether and how much you'll look at other examples that are out there to inform that and bring it to life. And specifically, have you given any thoughts, and to what extent you'll look at the federal government's Digital Transformation Agency's digital inclusion standard that's been developed there to bring forward what's going to occur in New South Wales?
Absolutely. We don't want to reinvent the wheel for any of these programs of work. And that is what a lot of this is about. It's about bridging the gaps. So anything that has already started and been developed, we will be leaning heavily on and working with. So we will definitely be reaching out nationally as well, looking at what they've already drafted, and then how can we make that relevant for New South Wales. So it's definitely not about reinventing the wheel, as I said. It's about how can we extend that and make it relevant to New South Wales.
Yeah, that's a great message, Nicole. Thank you. I think it also goes to the concept around the National Device Bank, right? And there's already
Right.
some tremendous work being done to bring that to life nationally. And we know that getting commitments from large employers like the New South Wales state government and big corporates to donate devices is a huge positive. It goes to both scale as well as signalling to other organisations, I think, about what's possible and what's worthwhile. On that point with the device bank, can you talk us through a little bit about what you think are some of the next or key steps internally at the New South Wales government to get agencies across the board and confident and understanding the approach there?
I think the way we're designing is that we're starting off with a proof of concept. So there are a lot of complexities across government with procurement and how we and from a privacy perspective and from cybersecurity and all of those initiatives. So what we're doing at the moment is doing some research and scope on what it will look like. We're starting with as I said, a proof of concept. So we're looking at the Department of Customer Service first, so that we can then build a framework and then we can launch it across all of New South Wales government.
Terrific. Thanks for that. We've got a question here that goes to the process you went through with the consultations to bring about the strategy, which, as I understand it, took place over a couple of years previous. What tools or what approach was taken to, I guess, consult widely, or were those that are sort of hard to reach, which is, goes to the issues of some of digital inclusion itself?
So we reached out to a lot of peak bodies, we reached out to a lot of NGOs, because we're not in communities, so we reached out to those with the expertise. We did consultation with industry as well and other government agencies. So Department of, like where we work in New South Wales Telco Authority, we're not in community. Our customers are predominantly our emergency service operators. So we did reach out to Department of Communities and Justice and ask them on who are their key stakeholders and who should we be reaching out to. So then when we did go through that consultation, we made sure that we had the right people in the room. It was, as you mentioned, it was very extensive and it did take quite a bit of time. It took about 18 months that we were out there doing all of that. So we did make sure that we had a very broad and very in-depth consultation period to make sure that the communities and the research that we were getting was that lived experience. It was very important for us to have the lived experience voices from each of those communities.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I'm sure the ecosystem here and the communities represented here will keen to keep in touch and stay engaged through program design and delivery as well. One more question that goes to the design of government services themselves, and designing government services with accessible in mind is super important, obviously, and it's great to see the plans around the inclusion standard that we just discussed. I think it's fair to say New South Wales has been at the forefront of digital service design in recent years, really taking a lead nationally on that. What are some of the key aspects you see in extending that leadership in the development of digital services broadly for the government from an inclusion perspective?
That's a great question. I'm not sure how to exactly answer that. I know there's been quite a bit of work from an accessibility standard. Digital New South Wales did have a team called Accessibility New South Wales. Sorry, I'm getting that correct. And they did a lot of work in the accessibility space. So there has been quite a bit of work, but I'd have to get right deep into that, I'd have to go and ask some of my colleagues.
Of course, that's fine. Sorry to put you on the spot with that one. We don't
that's okay.
have all of the answers. Nonetheless, and I think that brings us pretty much to the conclusion of our section here on the New South Wales digital inclusion strategy. So thank you, Nicole. To anyone whose question didn't get answered in this session, please feel free to send those through to us with the links that are available for ADIA at the end of this presentation, and we'll make sure that we'll connect you with Nicole perhaps to get those answered. But Nicole, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
No problems at all. Well, with that update from New South Wales in place, setting the standard nationally at the moment for a coordinated government approach on digital inclusion, we've got the perfect segue, I think, to an update on the national landscape. And some of our thinking here at ADIA on the opportunity we now have to elevate and accelerate action on digital inclusion at a national level. So, of course, none of us has missed the news about the historic return of the Albanese government. And for what it's worth, congratulations to all involved from the ADIA. I think there's two key factors at play here for our sector at the highest level. And that is, one, the thumping size of the majority. And I won't be alone in calling for all of us to use our influence for the government, to use that capital to achieve some real change, to be brave. We all have a role to play in that encouragement, and I urge you as a community and an ecosystem here to back that in. The second thing is, this is a mandate with heart, I think. Yes, there's some hard-nosed economic thinking, there's some big issues to deal with, and we'll mention the productivity agenda in a moment, but this is a government and a Prime Minister that has been very clear about its foundations. This statement, no one held back, no one left behind, speaks volumes as a defining principle, and you might say perfectly encapsulates the imperative of digital inclusion. I thought in this overview it might be helpful just to give a short overview of the various portfolio ministers who have a hand in digital inclusion in this government and who ADIA will be forging relationships with on behalf of the sector. I've listed 8 here, and you all know there's a longer list that reflects the multifaceted nature of our challenge in our sector, reaching further out into education, Indigenous affairs, health, NDIS, and other areas. On the left here, you have the portfolios we might generally historically associate with our digital inclusion efforts. Annika Wells, the new Communications Minister, has ownership of the First Nations Digital Inclusion Advisory Group and various other relevant coverage and connectivity programs. Andrew Giles is the new Minister for Skills and Training and has an interest in getting excluded people into the training pipeline with foundational digital capabilities. Tanya Plibersek has picked up social services and will be across a number of existing funded digital inclusion programs, as well as considering how digital inclusion supports the economic and social wellbeing of people right across the community. And finally, in this cohort, Katie Gallagher, along with some other responsibilities, she's got a pretty big mix of portfolios. She retains finance and government services. We make the point that if digital government services are a leader for efficiency and improved delivery, they can also be a lever to bring more people on the digital journey, give people the support they need to benefit from those services. What's new and interesting in the group of 4 on the right, they're all deep thinkers on productivity, tech, and equity. From the Treasurer to Andrew Lee, whose portfolio links productivity and not-for-profits, to Tim Ayres, who is charged with implementing a national digital and AI capability, and Andrew Trump, who with responsibility for digital economy is in a prime position to take a fresh look at how inclusion matters and what to do about it. All 4 of those guys have the challenge of balancing a much needed tech-driven productivity shift with the equity ethos I mentioned earlier. Of course, that includes how we address the impact of AI on workforces and other issues. But we believe here at the ADIA that digital inclusion needs to be at the front and centre of that discussion. We can already see the shape of that balance agenda forming, and I would expect we'll see more start to flow following the first cabinet meeting that held earlier this week. The government knows it needs to embrace tech and AI to shift the economy. It would be a contradiction of values if equity wasn't a factor in that embrace. You can see as much in these recent clips. The bottom one there from Tim Ayres was just this week, emphasising AI as a positive opportunity that we have to share in order to get the benefits. It's not just government saying this. Support for our agenda is starting to come from some pretty unlikely quarters. Here's just 2 major business groups that you might not generally think are fellow travellers with the ADIA or the broader community sector for that matter. In January, with an eye on future workforces, of course, the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry called for a national strategy on digital inclusion. Meanwhile, just this week, Business Council of Australia noted digital literacy from the youngest school age as an imperative to support AI benefits across the economy and society. We agree and invite these groups and others to join our broader mission on digital inclusion, right across access, affordability, and ability. The fact is, as you know, we need concerted and coordinated action on digital inclusion across the board, albeit, we would say, with skills and literacy at the forefront. Why? Because almost a quarter of the population can't fully participate in the digital world and everything that supports for everyday life, work, and everything else. That's the combined figure there of excluded and highly excluded from the 2023 Australian Digital Inclusion Index. And I think most Australians would be shocked by that number. It will be interesting to see where that lands with the next ADIA numbers out later this year. It's because digital inclusion is entwined with all the other factors of disadvantage in this country. And there's notable gaps for key marginalised cohorts, including First Nations. And while many digital tools offer great hope to deliver positive social and economic outcomes, those who might benefit most are often those who lack the capacity to engage. Digital inclusion enables social and economic participation and mobility, from social engagement to doing homework, getting a job, and progressing through the workforce. Digital tools are all pervasive, as you know, and they are now the essential tool to help people progress. AI is the fastest growing tech in history. It's already here, and it's incumbent that we help people get the most from it. In fact, some of the most disadvantaged people may actually benefit most. But putting AI aside, the everyday online world presents a world of challenges around safety and confidence and other factors where the need for skills and critical thinking is starting to take on new meaning. I suspect there's a bigger story here, but we know there's an economic benefit in digital inclusion. Last year, Good Things produced some very credible, though extremely conservative analysis that put the annual economic value at around $460 million. We think there's a great opportunity to broaden that thinking and for the country to understand better how to put a value on improved digital participation. Of course, never forgetting the social justice imperative as well. And it makes good sense that the digital inclusion sector is fragmented. It's a reflection of the complex challenge, and there is so much great work going on in addressing the needs of specific groups, many represented here today. But this fragmentation comes with risks and costs, inefficiency, duplication, gaps in service delivery, and foregone potential to scale impact. That's the imperative for action. So, what does ADIA think needs to happen? Well, in the coming weeks, you'll see us launch a new campaign calling for a national approach to digital inclusion. We'll publish an important position paper that outlines the environment and the imperative. We'll join with some key stakeholders to amplify the message to the federal government. And we'll be raising the call that if Australia is going to have an AI and tech-driven productivity future, and if no one is to be left behind, digital inclusion must be a strategic foundation to all of that. We've got 3 asks, and we'll be campaigning on them directly to government and through the community. This should be an inclusive, shared endeavour, as they've put it in the UK, and we heard Nicole from New South Wales speak of earlier. And we look forward to playing our role to advance the cause. We've got to establish national accountability. We need a cross-portfolio ministerial responsibility, bridging the work happening across government, including the states and the sector. We need a sector advisory body. We need a national goal, like that underpinning action on First Nations digital inclusion. Government's got to invest in coordination. We need to map the ecosystem, initiatives, opportunities. We've got to make sure the sector capacity is resourced, back the projects, back the advocacy. Promote digital inclusion across government. Help government to lead on this. Embed digital inclusion in digital government services. Government can lead the market. And we need to prioritise ability, not at the expense of access and affordability, but in recognition that skills and literacy are so foundational, and this is only becoming more important. So, support research and get the data on digital skills and literacy. Implement a national language, as ADIA has been calling for a number of years now, for digital ability, a definition of digital literacy, and a minimum benchmark for digital ability that recognises foundational on-ramps. Also, reflect that national language and benchmark across government efforts and promote its adoption. Together, these requests help shape a strategic approach on digital inclusion. There'll be more to it, but these are key steps that we believe will help galvanise action and support evidence-based policy to push us all forward. Please look out for our campaign and get in touch if there are any aspects of interest to you, or if you'd like to support us through your own activities. This is not about duplicating existing activities in the community. It's about elevating, amplifying, and coordinating for a better national outcome. Thank you. And I think I now have a few questions to take, one or two questions, if there are a few moments to take one or two questions, if there are any, or perhaps have a sip of water. I'll click here now to find the Q&A section. And I don't find any questions there now, so I can guess I can give a quick call now, and maybe I've got away. Thank you for the question from the anonymous attendee. How can we register interest to support the initiative? At the end of this presentation, you'll see an email address, info@digitalinclusion.org.au, which you could ping us on, and we would be happy to add you to our stakeholder list, or just drop something in the chat here now and we'll get back to you. No questions about that. My email address also is included in the invitation for this webinar. Okay, thank you. Well, with that, we'll move on, I believe. And it brings us to the third section of our meetup today, Innovation in Digital Inclusion, featuring SeedKit, a terrific research program looking at how to track and enable digital inclusion initiatives for social enterprises. I know the team, Joe and Joanna, are very keen to get lots of feedback, so please take the chance when you get it to drop some questions into the Q&A and add any comments. So now I'm very pleased to introduce Ricky Andrews, who is Manager for Public Benefit at ADIA, the Australian Domain Registrar. Ricky's going to give a bit of background on the ADIA Public Benefit Grant Program that has supported SeedKit, and also to introduce us to Professor Joe Barakat and Dr. Joanne Khan-Koo to give us the story of the program. Over to you, Ricky.
Thank you so much, Tim, and good afternoon, everybody. So I'm very pleased to be here to be able to share with you about the public benefit program here at ADIA, and particularly to let you know about the SeedKit project that was funded in our 2024 program. So next slide, please, Ish. So about ADIA, as Tim said, we're the .au domain administration, and we administer the .au domain for the benefit of all Australians. So for all of you on the call, if you have a com.au or an org.au, etc. Domain, then we ensure, as part of our critical infrastructure delivery, we ensure that is operating smoothly and securely. The public benefit program that fits within ADIA is an opportunity for ADIA to give back to the Australian community, and that's where we provide funding for partner organisations, grant recipients, to look at some innovation and research around activities that will be valuable for Australians from the benefits that we get from using the internet. So all of those things that we've been talking about earlier today about the importance of digital inclusion, we know that value and we try to deliver that. So our public benefit program activities include our community grant program. We have a research and development grant program. We've recently launched a partnership with the Churchill Trust, and then we undertake a number of other projects as well. Next slide, thanks, Ish. So with our community grant program, it's an annual grant program that supports education and research and community-based projects that enhance the utility of the internet. And we seek high-impact proposals that deliver digital inclusion and digital innovation. And we have priority groups, which would be familiar to all of you, and they are the groups that have been identified with the most to gain from and the most at risk of digital exclusion. So we have more information about this particular program on our website, and the link is there for you. But what I wanted to highlight for the group is that some of the projects that we've funded in the past include the economic benefits of digital exclusion report that Tim mentioned earlier. So that was a grant provided to Good Things Foundation, and they were able to produce that amazing piece of work. We also funded SACOS to look at the value of community assets such as libraries and community centres and how they enable digital inclusion for people. And so I was really pleased to also hear from Nicole about how the government is going to work, the New South Wales government will work with those community assets such as libraries and community centres, and I'd add in schools and TAFEs and universities as good centres that can be supported to enable as many people as possible to be digitally included. We also look at supporting projects that take a different approach to enabling that digital ability. So looking, rather than simply funding projects that roll out those basic digital skills, we're looking at projects that might actually be able to deliver on some other important community issues, such as social isolation, such as gaining access to the employment market. So with what we're going to talk about today with the Seed Kit project, I have been in this role for 18 months and I'm learning more and more about digital inclusion. And a question that was raised for me was, do we have a consistent way of measuring and evaluating the projects that we're undertaking to address digital inclusion so that collectively we can present some consistent data to the government or any other funder to help with our argument. So I'm really pleased that the Seed Kit team, Joe and Joanne and their colleagues, were able to put in an application to the ALDA grant program last year and were successful in getting funding. And they will be working on, and they will share more about this, of course, but they'll be working on how to develop, in a co-designed manner, a suite of consistent measures for us all to be able to evaluate our digital inclusion projects. So I'm really pleased to be able to throw over to Joe and Joanne and for them to be able to share more about the Seed Kit project. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ricky, and thank you, Tim and Nicole, acknowledging that I'm on Wurundjeri country, always was, always will be. For those of you who I don't know, my name's Jo Barrackett. I'm the Director of Melbourne Social Equity Institute at the University of Melbourne. And material to this conversation some time ago, in the deep, dark time of the mid-2020s, alongside the mighty Julian Thomas. I was the co-founder of the Australian Digital Inclusion Index. So I know enough about digital inclusion to be dangerous. I was involved in that team until 2021 when I moved institutions. And also just listening to Tim's comments on ADIA's strategy with government, probably just acknowledging also that I was the expert advisor and lead drafter of the National Not-for-Profit Sector Development Blueprint, which was delivered to government late last year, because there's obviously a fair bit of crossover in some of those agendas, and want to thank and acknowledge ADIA members who have contributed to that process so far. Next slide, thanks, Ish. So just a little bit of background on Seed Kit and then also this project, and starting with the most important thing, which is to acknowledge ALDA for their contribution to this particular part of the work that we're doing in Seed Kit. But in a nutshell, Seed Kit is an online platform and set of learning resources that helps small to medium social enterprises measure and communicate their social impacts. It's free to the user. It was built with investment from the Victoria government. It's fully owned by the University of Melbourne, but it was co-developed in its initial iteration by the Centre for Social Impact Swinburne at Swinburne University and Melbourne Social Equity Institute. It's currently funded in part by Minderoo Foundation, and it's also previously had funding from Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation. I think one of the things that's important about Seed Kit is that it was co-designed from the start. So it was co-designed designed with 32 social enterprises who engaged with the design and build team at a number of stages through the process. But, and you're welcome to go into it. As I said, it's free to the user. And even though it's technically for social enterprises, you can get in there by setting up a trial account. And also for-purpose organisations generally we find are using SeedKit and finding it useful. It's something of an irony, being a co-founder of the ADII, that we didn't include in the suite of indicators within SeedKit a specific domain around digital inclusion. So I thank Ricky for very politely pointing that out to me and inviting us to propose an addition to SeedKit on that front. But if you do go into SeedKit, what you'll find is that it's got a very broad indicators bank that covers off on multiple social, environmental and cultural domains of impact that includes more than 500 indicators that the user can use to set up what we call impact pathways, so that they can actually document and collect data and map out and then visualize their impacts across a range of issues that social enterprises are engaged with and a range of purposes that they seek to deliver on. In terms of this specific project, what are we doing? It's an important yet modest project, and what we're doing in this piece of work is developing, in the first instance, based on existing research, a domain set around digital inclusion, and also looking at how we then integrate that with other impact pathways. I noticed someone in the comments was talking about the relationship between various aspects of exclusion and digital inclusion, and we're conscious of that. So we're building into the platform some integrated pathways between different aspects of digital inclusion and other forms of exclusion. We'll be engaging in user validation, and this is very much a work in progress right now. So this actually forms part of it. We're delighted to hear your feedback as digital inclusion experts, as well as your questions from this session. The other part about SeedKit is that it is a learning platform. So it has a suite, at this stage not huge, but a suite of learning resources for users who are interested in understanding aspects of evaluation and outcomes measurement. So part of this project will also be about developing one or two learning resources that are specific to issues to do with evaluating and measuring digital inclusion. I just wanted to make one further comment before I hand over to Joanne, who's doing a lot of the work and is going to drive most of this presentation, that this is not an attempt to replicate the Australian digital inclusion work. This is a platform that helps small to medium organisations with their evaluation outcomes measurement work. If you look at the survey instrument for the ADII, it's pretty sophisticated, and it's got a series of questions in it that they don't stand alone. They're questions that relate to each other, and that's how inferences are derived from that information. We're not comfortable with the idea of putting that into the hands of people who are not necessarily research specialists and perhaps also not specialists in digital inclusion. So what we're trying to do in this project is come up with a suite of indicators that will make sense and can be used at a relatively, I don't want to call it basic, but a relatively real level for the kinds of organisations that are engaged in digital inclusion work. So I'll hand over to Joanne now, who's going to tell you more.
Thanks, Jo. Next slide, please, Ish. Thank you. I think a typical starting point for developing or designing any measurement is usually understanding the purpose of measurement, or usually we say, what do we want to know? And what do we want to measure? And also the understanding of how data collected will be used. So we put some reasons here as we have come across from both the literature and our experience and the projects as reasons, possible reasons to measure digital inclusion. But I do invite everyone to please put any reasons you have come across or you have witnessed from your own experience or projects or work through the Q&A section. So we can see other reasons out there. So we probably want to measure digital inclusion to track, monitor the progress and results of our digital inclusion initiatives or programs, and benefits, outcomes, or impacts of digital inclusion, or offering digital products or services, etc. And also we might have seen intended or unintended consequences. So outcomes which could be either positive or negative of digital inclusion or digital divide and other aspects of social outcomes. So this could be beyond the concepts we are talking about frequently as accessibility or affordability, but other aspects of social outcomes such as health or education or economic participation. Another scenarios or reasons for us to measure and understand or gain deeper understanding of digital inclusion is to identify the drivers and factors affecting or contributing either to digital inclusion or digital divide. And that will help us develop better digital solutions or digital services or better reach to hard-to-reach cohorts or groups and populations. Next slide, please. So based on the digital inclusion and digital divide literature and research in this broad field and current common practice, I've highlighted some of the very common key concepts here, which are both essential to digital inclusion, but also to developing measurements around digital inclusion or digital divide practice and activities. So as we have, I think this is probably very not very familiar to the audience here. We've seen accessibility, availability or use of both the internet and digital products or digital solutions, which is usually called the first level of digital divide. I'm sure everybody's familiar with those concepts there, but I just wanted to highlight that collection itself is only one aspect of access. So there's also the quality of connection and the quality of the internet connection as well. And in terms of affordability, we know there will be aspects including the cost of devices, both the software and hardware, and connection costs associated. Digital literacy and digital skills is another important domain or aspect of digital inclusion, which has been discussed earlier, both in Tim and Nicole's presentation as well. I just wanted to highlight that in the literature, there's a distinguished notation of technological or operational skills and information literacy. So the operational skills usually refer to knowing how to use and apply hardwares or softwares, while on the other hand, information literacy covers use or ability to know how to navigate information and the ability to recognize different information resources and the need to find and use information to fill a need, etc. And also another aspect of digital skills and literacy is what we call the safe use. So that includes the ability to understand and recognize online risks, etc. And benefits of digital inclusion is also usually referred to as the third level of digital divide. So here we usually see that's the different outcomes of online activities. So people might have different activities they perform online or using internet, and this will lead to benefits and outcomes offline in their life. And this is also an area with emerging evidence, as we have heard earlier, as Tim also touched. For example, this enabler for people to progress. So as economic participation, this education, health outcomes of using and accessing digital services and products. And also in the broader digital inclusion research and literature, there are concepts with emerging evidence. So by emerging, I mean a lot of these concepts and topics are not new, but there is a lack of understanding or in-depth research on specific topics. For example, it has been recognized with emerging evidence that this data inequalities, which some are referring to it as the fourth digital divide, and that also has associated with concepts as knowing the different data roles, like data owners and data stewards, and the associated equitable data governance structure, etc., etc. And another example is to recognize the digital production role, which is typically, I think, in the past, a lot of focus and attention and research have been placed on the assumption roles or assumption type of activities around the online activities, but there's a need to recognize the production or the effect of productivity and learning of these online activities.
And I might just jump in there for 1 second to say it was my big bugbear with the first few years of the ADII, because of the data source that we used. There was such a strong focus on digital consumption and not much focus on digital production, which I think needs a bit more attention in the digital inclusion, in our understanding of digital inclusion and its effects and the implications of improving it.
Thanks, Jo. Next slide, please, Ish. So the second approach to measuring digital inclusion, I think we start from the point acknowledging that a lot of the factors affecting different aspects of digital inclusion are multifaceted. And as Jo also mentioned, the intention of developing the indicators is not to replace a specific, sophisticated, or specifically designed survey tools to measure the different aspects of digital inclusion in a systematic way. So our approach is to take those key concepts from the practice and the research of digital inclusion as our underlying principle to guide our design and development of the indicators. So another, I think, concept here for us to flag is that indicators could help us to measure specific outputs and outcomes of the digital inclusion initiatives or outcomes. So the indicators are not specifically or direct questions, so to speak, but we approach the tangible results and the desired outcomes of the digital inclusion as a whole. So these are the potential draft outcome areas or impact pathways we use to group our indicators with. So as you can see, these are built upon the common as key aspects in the digital inclusion field: access, affordability, literacy skills, and digital benefits. Next slide, please. So here I'll give you some draft output indicators we have here. For example, for improved access and output type of indicator would capture the direct result or the tangible things that's done or offered, usually activities or services developed or products offered by your digital inclusion initiative. Next slide, please. And the outcome type of indicator is to capture the change that associate or come from the initiative. So that could be either negative or positive, as mentioned before. And here I give you some examples for different digital benefits or the manifestation of digital benefits in different sub areas. So we can see this civic participation, social participation, or culture activities. So indicators, again, needs to be very specific and time-bound. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, so there are other social outcomes or outcomes of digital inclusion in other social areas. So as we know, probably the outcomes of digital inclusion or digital products or digital solutions could cover all 17 areas of the SDG. And in CKID, as Joe mentioned, we have 11 different domains or possible impact areas for the initiatives to select from. So, for example, community connection, place-based development, or arts and culture. So the organization or the initiative have the chance to go to navigate other possible social outcomes to link to the digital inclusion program. Next slide, please. We will also, as part of this program, we'll also develop learning materials to help build the capacity of organizations and digital inclusion initiatives to design or to embed the design thinking into the evaluation. Next slide, please. Yes, so we would like to test these indicators and the underlying concepts with potential users, programs, initiatives who have worked on or working on with digital inclusion concepts, and we will have our call for help in due time, and I will hope you will sign up and join us in that one of the user validation sessions. Right, next slide. So, yes, question and comments time.
Thanks, Joanne. And I want to do a shout out to Heather Ray and thank you for already providing some input, which was highly valued, and also to Good Things Foundation. I'm not sure exactly who's here, but it's all been really useful so far. I'm not sure if Tim's here.
Thank
oh, there
you
you
so
are.
much for the presentation, guys. Don't forget, everyone, you can drop a question for the team into the Q&A section, and I'll pick that up and I can relay that to them. While they come in, Joe and Joanne, thank you very much for that presentation. Great to get the overview and all the context of where it all come from. Really important work. Because being able to track outcomes is super valuable, obviously, for identifying what works and how we can extend the impact. Can you maybe tell us more about what you've learned from global practice in what works so far as indicators for impact? Other examples also from outside the community sector and digital inclusion specifically that can apply here, and how you measure the effectiveness of programs, initiatives, even products?
Yeah, so I mean, in a nutshell, sorry, Joanne, I can't see your face on my screen, so I'm just leaping in. But I mean, my core advice as someone who does a lot of outcomes measurement is to pick your measures do them well and selectively and stick to them as long as you can, because the greatest insight you get is over time. And one of the things that we observe, and we certainly observed when we were co-designing CKIT, is that people who are new and organisations that are new to outcomes measurement have a tendency to want to measure everything, whereas those who are a bit more mature in the space recognise that measuring some things well and making sense of those over time will actually yield some benefits, both in terms of improving their own practices and also communicating and persuading others of the impacts of the work, which certainly matters in terms of building markets and also getting government funding.
So fine tuning. Don't try and catch everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And making sure that you're really clear on why you're doing it as well. So I think that's the other thing. There's a lot of focus on measuring outcomes in order to prove your worth. I would say, and I know I live in an ivory tower where life is warm and fuzzy, but I would say that it's much more useful to measure outcomes to learn and improve, whether that's at an individual organisational level or a network level like ADIA or other organisational formats. But, you know, it's obviously important at a macro level to understand how we're tracking, which is why things like the ADII matter. But at the level of organisational practice, if we are not measuring to improve and we're only measuring to prove, then we're in trouble.
Yeah, I think that's right. A good reflection. Thank you. Don't forget to add your questions in the Q&A, folks. I've got a couple here, but I can't go all day hogging the microphone. But Joe and Joanne, you're going through some validation of the project, and this session, I guess, is a little bit of a part of that. What kind of feedback and collaboration are you hoping for from potential users through that process?
Joanne, over to you.
I think, yes, sure. So we would like to host online user validation sessions. So to really test those draft indicators and how practical they are, and also the underlying some of the underlying concepts as mentioned. So for example, are we assuming the focus is at the individual level, and also we have some existing features of CKIT that could allow users to modify or tailor their cohorts. As we mentioned earlier, some of the programs might be specifically interested in certain cohorts. So we wanted to test all these features are working well and make sense to people. I mean, like the other thing is, as I mentioned, the measurements and the indicators are highly specific and contextual. So we designed the indicator suite with the mindset that we can use this to support organizations with the diverse, purposes and backgrounds. So we wanted to test that assumption is also working.
Okay, Joanne, thank you. A practical question has just come in on exactly that point around the validation sessions. When do you expect to put a call out for those?
Right. We actually just got our ethics approval for this activity yesterday, so it takes a bit longer than expected. So we probably will have this in coming weeks, and also understanding that we're in kind of, with the upcoming holiday season, and then people might take in leave. So as I would say, in practice, probably we will run this from mid to late July to August.
Okay, so we'll stand by, but Joanne, when you are putting that call out, make sure you contact us here at the ADIA, and we'll get something in our newsletter, and maybe that's one way people can keep a track of it other than getting directly in contact with you guys. Another question from me, I'm curious about the lived experience for those in community organisations and the communities that they work with. What are you finding in your work that are some of the most common digital inclusion challenges they face, and how do you hope that this project or CKIT more broadly will help address those? I guess the question goes to the feedback that you might have already had in the development of your project here about the challenges people are having in delivering their projects or getting that right.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, Tim. We were politely waiting for colleagues from small organisations on the chat to speak rather than speak for them.
Very good. My reflection is, how have you experienced that through
Yeah.
through
Look,
your engagement?
I mean, this is probably more of a generic statement about outcomes measurement and small organisations, but actually, I want to sort of flip this a bit. I actually think that Australia as a whole is pretty immature on outcomes measurement and communication, and it often the truism that's put out there is smaller organisations are worse at it. Now, I think smaller organisations have much fewer resources. They're under, extreme stress. But actually, I can say, because I'm a professor and I'm allowed, that I see immature practice in impact investing organisations, in government agencies, both central and service delivery. There's not a lot of clarity about why we're measuring, and then not a lot of clarity about what to measure. But in terms of your specific question about smaller organisations and digital inclusion, I mean, I think, to anyone who's on the call and on the webinar wants to say what you want to say, please do put it in the Q&A. But I think it probably goes a little bit back to what you presented in the middle of the session, Tim, is what's the actual strategic purpose of doing this work? There is no question that there would be digital inclusion and exclusion issues informing not just organisations whose job it is to fix that, but organisations who are delivering services. So, during the lockdowns, there was all sorts of issues with how you make sure that someone who's getting health services is getting those in a safe way when they're doing that from their home, where they might be in an unsafe environment, things like that. So I think that's probably across the board, the digital transformation that we're experiencing is raising a whole lot of new considerations for organisations about how they support the different outcomes of digital exclusion for the people that they seek to serve.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks very much. Great insights. I've got a question here for Ricky from ADIA. It goes to the Community Grants Program. Ricky, I think it's now in its second or third year. Will there be openings for more applications later this year? Do you have any detail on the continuation of the program?
Thanks, Tim, and thank you so much to whoever asked that question, because I should have mentioned it during my opening remarks. But yes, we will be rolling out another community grant program at this point in time, aiming to have the guidelines available on our website in early July, with a view to applications being open in the month of August, and a decision would be made in December for successful applicants. So there will be some tweaks to the guidelines. So yes, there's information available on our website now, but keep in mind we will be doing some revisions. So perhaps wait until that early July, and we'll look forward to receiving everybody's proposals then.
Becky White, who did ask that question, you've got your information there. Start putting polish on your application, perhaps, knowing that that's coming up. Thank you to Ricky. Hey, I might just about call it there. Thanks so much to Ricky and Joe and Joanne for that combined presentation from ADIA and from SeedKit. I think SeedKit is very easy to find if you put a simple search into your preferred search engine there, and it's very easy to get in touch or come through us at ADIA, and we'd be very pleased to make a connection. Thank you so much for the comments here. We'll make sure that they get to the team as well. That's really all the time we've got for today on the webinar. Thanks to everyone in your support of ADIA and digital inclusion more broadly. Please keep an eye out for our upcoming campaign, as I introduce here today, and join us in our mission to elevate and amplify digital inclusion at the national level. We're only as good as the ecosystem that we try to bring together. Here, we value your work deeply. If you can check in the comments section now, you should, if my colleague Ish is right onto the script, should be able to find a link to subscribe to our newsletter if you already haven't, to keep in touch with all the things happening in the digital inclusion space. Our next edition will be out in the next week or two, and we'll include a link to this webinar recording. Thank you to you all for attending and watching online. And of course, thank you again to our speakers. I'm Tim Marshall. I look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you.